Here we are discussing some important PlayStation news as Bethesda's future on PlayStation reportedly set to be unveiled during their event in March, with former Perfect Dark reboot design director joining Insomniac and Sony developing a live-action Twisted Metal show with Deadpool writers. We also discuss about the Sony's take on Japanese games, their new acquisition, and a rumor for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 might be getting a PS5 and a Nintendo Switch release. So before jumping into the topics, if you are new, subscribe to the channel and click the notification icon for knowing instant updates and more interesting and informative topics in the daily gaming world. Now let's jump in. A recent report from reliable sources suggests that Microsoft is set to hold an event in March to discuss Bethesda's future place within the company, subsequently revealing what the company's future is like on PlayStation. I think that Microsoft will make note about it, their Bethesda acquisition, and they will talk about it extensively, explain what it means for everybody, and talk about the immediate future of both companies becoming one. According to the reports, it isn't sure if this event will be a full direct-style showcase, but it does state that it will happen sometime in mid-March after the acquisition has been approved in Europe. As for what this means for PlayStation players, it likely means we will finally have a definitive answer as to what Microsoft plans to do with Bethesda on Sony and Nintendo platforms and where their games will end up. Will they be exclusive to Xbox and PC? Will they come first to these platforms? This event will hopefully be where we find out. Up next we have the Perfect Dark and Insomniac Games news as Drew Murray, former Perfect Dark reboot design director 3 weeks after his departure from the initiative, he rejoins developer Insomniac Games following his original decade-long tenure. In 2018, Microsoft began the process of creating a new development studio called The Initiative. For the years that followed, many were unsure what would come from the mysterious in-house studio until December 2020 with the announcement of a new Perfect Dark game at the Game Awards. News on the Perfect Dark reboot remains stagnant, but the studio has been going through a state of reformation in recent weeks. Design director Drew Murray, who was a part of the studio since its inception in November 2018, announced his departure from the initiative earlier this month. The reasons behind his departure were scarce, citing life outside of work needing more attention as his motivation for leaving. Prior to his tenure with the initiative, Murray was a designer for Insomniac Games for over a decade. With the latest announcement involving Murray's future in his career, it seems that his story with Insomniac Games is not over. Weeks after announcing of his departure from the studio making Perfect Dark, Murray revealed today that he has rejoined Insomniac Games for a second stint. Resuming his work within Insomniac Games, Murray's tweet identifies his new role within the studio as principal designer. Murray's first departure from Insomniac Games came years before Sony's acquisition of the development studio, which makes Murray's rejoining an interesting case as he left a Microsoft-owned studio to join a Sony-owned studio. The departure from the initiative was not on bad terms, however, as Executive Vice President of Microsoft Gaming Phil Spencer bade fond farewells after his initial resignation tweet. It would seem that Murray wished to rejoin his former colleagues, considering his long history with Insomniac Games. Murray's accolades within Insomniac Games include being a designer and the lead designer for several games, including the Resistance series, Ratchet & Clank Future, Tools of Destruction, and directing the Microsoft-exclusive title Sunset Overdrive. Sunset Overdrive would be the last game he worked on with Insomniac Games prior to leaving for the first time. Being a veteran of the studio, Murray's knowledge of Insomniac Games as its principal director should prove valuable on Insomniac Games' future projects. Currently, Insomniac Games is working on Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, the company's first exclusive PS5 developed game. With the game scheduled for a June release, it's to be expected that Murray's insight with the Ratchet & Clank series will prove invaluable as the game approaches gold status, and also Perfect Dark is currently in development.
Right. Today I will finally be free of the both of you. Soon, Everything you see will be mine. Say goodbye.
Moving on forward, we have interesting news as Sony and PlayStation Productions are developing a live-action Twisted Metal series with Deadpool writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. Sony Pictures Television and PlayStation Productions are developing a live-action series based on the Twisted Metal video game franchise. The adaptation will be based on an original take from Deadpool and Zombieland writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. Released in 1995, the first Twisted Metal game allowed players to select a vehicle with which they would fight rivals using a variety of weapons located within the arena of their choice, with the last driver standing being crowned the victor. Twisted Metal and its sequel centered on the titular vehicular combat tournament, with the sinister Needles Kane, driver of the killer clown-themed vehicle known as Sweet Tooth, being one of the most recognizable characters of the franchise. Per Variety, Sony and PlayStation Productions' television adaptation of Twisted Metal is described as an action comedy about a motor-mouth outsider who is offered a chance at a better life. However, the offer is on the condition that they can successfully deliver a mysterious package across a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Joining forces with a trigger-happy car thief, the central character of the series will be threatened by drivers of armed vehicles, including one driven by a deranged clown. The Lego Batman movie star Will Arnett has been rumored to be voicing Sweet Tooth for a cameo, but an individual close to the project informed Variety that no such deal is currently in place. Michael Jonathan Smith, who previously wrote and produced episodes of Netflix's Cobra Kai, is on board the Twisted Metal series as writer and executive producer. Reese and Wernick are also attached as executive producers, as are Asad Kizilbash and Carter Swan of PlayStation Productions and PlayStation Studios head Herman Hulst. Arnett will serve as executive producer through his Electric Avenue production company alongside artists firsts Mark Foreman and Peter Principato. The Twisted Metal series is only the latest video game adaptation being developed by Sony Pictures Television and PlayStation Productions. Both parties are also moving forward with an adaptation of The Last of Us, an action-adventure game set in a post-apocalyptic world overrun by cannibalistic people and creatures infected by a mutated fungus. The Mandalorian and Wonder Woman 1984 star Pedro Pascal will star the smuggler Joe opposite Game of Thrones star Bella Ramsey, who will portray Ellie. Whether Sony and PlayStation Productions' Twisted Metal series can live up to the expectations of fans is hard to determine without more details on the project. However, reception towards the casting for The Last of Us series has been generally positive, so that may instill confidence when it comes to the Twisted Metal adaptation. A new report from GamesPark, translated by Reset Era, suggests that Sony has previously had Japanese developers censor graphic content from their games, before being able to release it on their platform. The report suggests that for CyberConnect 2's Naruto games, Minato Namikaze's arm was originally supposed to be missing, but his arm had to be included as Sony Interactive Entertainment prohibited limb defects in human-looking characters, even if they were corpses that had come back to life. However, in the more recent Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, a scene which included Nappa cutting off a Matsuhan's arm was speculated to be approved because of the different styles between Dragon Ball and Naruto, and the changing times. So, ultimately, this means that Sony takes violence, and whether or not to censor it on a case-by-case basis. This also doesn't seem to apply to Western games, as both The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima feature graphic violence including limbs being severed. This tracks with how Sony used lens flare to block out a shot of Trish's bum in Devil May Cry 5, which was another Japanese-developed game. So, whilst this won't mean a lot for developers in the West or players in the West, it definitely seems like Sony is censoring certain types of content on the Japanese side, specifically heavy violence and sexual content. This also is apparently not down to Zero, the Japanese rating system, and came from Sony directly, which could be a way of Sony trying to avoid the regulator declining the release of the game and Sony then having to resubmit it with edited content, which costs additional money, time and resources. Up next we have the Sony's acquisition news, as rumors about Sony acquiring Remaster Maestro's Bluepoint games have started gathering steam once again, and this time, the administrator over at prominent games forum Reset Era has now chimed in on the matter. But first, let's go back a bit. Last year, Reset Era forum member Marzipan Rumpen posted that a deal between both Sony and Bluepoint Games had been finalized. Unfortunately, this caused a lot of uproar on the forums, with people calling for the user to be banned as nothing on the supposed acquisition had come to fruition. Now, moderator Transistor has offered their 2 cents on the matter, and has backed up the previous user's claims that an acquisition is indeed on the cards. First off, I want to say how disappointed in this community I am, Transistor writes. The amount of hostility in this thread is unwarranted. This community needs to be better about how it treats one another. As for Marzipan Rumpen, he's not going to get banned, so chill it out. There's been smoke from multiple sources about Bluepoint being acquired by Sony, so it's pretty much going to happen, it's just a matter of when. I had faith enough that it was going to happen, so I would never have to ban them in the first place. I don't like actual ban bets and don't tend to entertain them. Bluepoint Games is best known for its various remasters and remakes, having worked on the likes of Metal Gear Solid the HD Collection, Shadow of the Colossus and PS5's Demon's Souls. It will be interesting to see the acquisition of Bluepoint Games. Before jumping into the final topic, I want to share you some news as Disney Plus 3.01 patch update finally brings 4K to PS4, PS5 users. The Disney Plus Update 3.01, which came before 4 days, has at long last added full 4K support for PS5 and PS4 owners, something which the app has been sorely lacking for Sony console owners. Oddly enough, the Xbox Series X app has already offered 4K and HDR support, so yes, this is a pretty major deal. Even on the PS5, the Disney Plus app had a resolution limitation of 1080p, which isn't exactly what you'd expect from a high-end streaming service nowadays. Thankfully, that appears to have now been fixed. In addition, folk have also found a way to address the subtitles look, which can be done by going to the settings on your PS5 and switching on closed captions or subtitles. From here, you can customize the subtitles and switch them back off after, with any customizations you make being applied to Disney Plus. Now coming into our final topic, as tweets from both Activision and Nintendo of America hint that the remake of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+ May 2nd soon be arriving on Switch, and also a PS5 version is indeed in works. The owner of the IP and platform both shared an identical post, all but confirming the title's additional platform. Releasing for PS4 and Xbox One in September 2020, the nostalgia-packed title was met with almost entirely positive reception from critics and fans alike, the game nails being fun and staying true to the source material almost flawlessly. News of the THPS remake coming to Switch began to spread when the eponymous Tony Hawk sent out a particularly suggestive tweet. The most well-known skater in the world took note of Crash Bandicoot 4 coming to PS5, Xbox Series X, and Switch in March, saying that he's kinda jealous before asking the Crash Twitter handle to hook up his own game with the same deal. Shortly after, Activision, which owns both the Crash Bandicoot and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater IPs, and Nintendo of America responded with the eyes emoji, suggesting fans should be on the lookout for a Switch port of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 on the horizon. Not much later, several associated accounts then began replying further to Hawk's request. The official Crash Bandicoot handle asked for assistance from Activision in the matter. Nintendo of America then ended up responding as well, imploring Crash to make the whole situation work out for everyone involved. Essentially, this just seems to be a fancy marketing and social media campaign to let fans know that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2 will finally be coming elsewhere. With the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater releasing on Nintendo 64 in 1999, many fans were left confused as to why the remake was initially excluded from the current Nintendo platform. While purely speculation, the reasoning could be that Activision is waiting for the release of the often rumored Nintendo Switch Pro. Not much is known about the rumored console, except that the aforementioned insider claims it will be a substantial upgrade, and could therefore better handle Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2's graphics and fast-paced gameplay. In the era of video game remakes and remasters, it's a win for everyone to see such a beloved title come to as many platforms as possible. Speaking of which, another cherished game is being revived, or rather, resurrected, as Blizzard's Diablo 2. Resurrected is coming to both PC and console in 2021. It'll be exciting to see what other games will get current-gen updates over the next few years. But could we see it getting a PS5 release? Signs point to maybe. This all started when Tony Hawk on Twitter tweeted out that Crash Bandicoot 4 is getting a PS5 release and coming to other platforms, so why isn't Tony Hawk? On its own, there would be nothing to take from this, but publishers and official accounts have been responding a lot to Tony Hawk's tweet, with the official Crash Bandicoot Twitter account responding, along with Nintendo's, Xbox's, and Activision's official accounts. I am sure right now if this is a viral marketing plan from multiple accounts, or if they are actually teasing a PS5 remaster of the game, which would make a lot of sense as it only released in September 2020. If you think about DualSense haptic feedback and instant loading, then it makes even more sense. And that's all for the video, guys. If you are interested, give it a like and share it, and until then, from SMPV, it's goodbye.
Crap.